Hey, and welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be stage 2 of my sound system install, and that's going to be putting this Polk Audio 5-channel amp and either that Pioneer 10-inch subwoofer or that 12-incher down there into my car. If you watch stage 1, what I did is I changed out all the door speakers for higher quality Polk speakers, and those need a higher power source since they're more powerful speakers. So that's what this is going to do. It's going to take the signal from my head unit, amplify it, and send it back to those speakers, which in turn is going to give me much clearer sound and just a much higher sound quality overall in the car. As well, it's going to allow me to run this subwoofer since it's a 5-channel, 5 being the 4-door speakers plus 1 the subwoofer. So to do this install, we're going to need our amplifier, of course, and this is the remote control that controls the sub level for the 5-channel. But we're also going to need an amp installation kit. So this New Concepts kit off of Amazon, it's a pretty good kit. I've used it before. It's oxygen-free copper. I think it's about 18 feet of that. And then you've got your RCA cable that comes with, some speaker wires. I have a whole bunch of speaker wires already from this company, and they work well. And then some zip ties, a remote wire here, fuse block, the ground wire, and just some connectors and clips that you need for the install. So I'm going to use that. Got my amp there, got my sub. What we need to do is get it all into the car. So if you've ever done an amp install, whether it's a subwoofer or 4-channel amp or even 5-channel like I'm doing, you know that the first thing you need to do is hook up your power source. Or one of the major components is hooking up your power source anyway. So what I'm going to do is take my power obviously off the battery. I'm going to put a fuse pretty close to where the battery is here. And then I'm going to get into the cabin through the firewall. So there's 2 things you can do on a Legacy. One of them is to use the little wheel well gasket that's in the corner there. I've got another video where I'll show you how to get into that if that's what you're interested in doing. But basically what's going to happen is the wire is going to run down the fender and into the cabin that way, and they'll come out near the fuse box. But the way I'm going to be doing it today is using this little, I don't know if you call that a gasket or what you'd call that, but just a little entry point into the firewall there. You can see somebody has already, this isn't me, somebody has actually cut a spot there and put a wire in, running to some kind of electronic. I'm not sure what it is. And the funny thing is, I've actually unhooked that from the battery, and I was on the other side of the firewall when I first got this car trying to figure out what that wire was. I have no idea, but obviously it didn't affect anything, so no big deal. Coming around to the inside, to do this install, we're going to need to completely take apart that center console because we need to get to the speaker wires behind the head unit itself. We're going to have to take this seat out or lift it up, do whatever you want, because I'm going to be putting my amp under there. And then the other thing is we're going to have to take that wire that's coming up behind the firewall there, and we're going to run it down the right side of the car here like this to get to the seat. I'm doing that because I don't want to put it through the center there, because I don't want to keep my speaker signal wires and my power wire together. That can cause interference and it can cause a dirty signal. So from there, I'm going to be taking the sub wires and sending those kind of down the side of the car here, up the back and into the trunk area there where I'm going to have the subwoofer sitting. But to start this off, the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and remove my center console here, pull the everything out. I've shown how to do that in a previous video, and it's pretty easy to figure out. So I'm not going to go over how I do that just to save time. And then I'm going to start feeding the wire from the battery through that gasket and see where it comes out here. And that's where I'll resume the video. Okay, so the head unit is removed. Now we're going to move on to getting this glove box out of the way. So we're going to take off the side here. It just pops right off. Pull the glove box down, unhook the string, and that's going to allow us to get the wire down into the side runner here. And we have to undo this to get the glove box to come out. Okay, so that was a bit difficult to get on camera, but take a look. The glove box is gone, and now we have some access to the firewall from this side. Now here's the funny thing, is that I just realized this car was pre-wired for an amp from the previous owner. Now, it must have been a pretty puny amp, and they must have had it right here, because this is, I think, an 18 gauge wire or something it read on there. But yeah, that was the wire that went in from the other side. And then there's a couple of wires that lead into the head unit stuff over there. So I'm actually just going to go through and get rid of all their wiring because I don't want the complication. I'm going to do it all fresh myself here. Okay, so this looks a little bit complicated, but I'll break it down really simple. So these are the wires for the previous guy's amp, and they run over to here. These are all the factory wires that go to the various speakers and different things from the head unit. This is the harness that I used to connect my head unit. So if you're doing this on a stock car with no aftermarket head unit, you're just going to have this harness. Forget about all that. And you're not going to have these wires coming off because somebody wired an amp in before. So you can see that this branches off in two ways. I'm actually going to take this apart and get rid of this section. But before I do that, I want to talk about how this amp is going to be wired. So let's talk two things here. Aftermarket head unit, you're going to have these RCA inputs here, or correction, outputs. So you can see front left, front right, rear left, rear right, subwoofer left and right. Yeah, that's something else. But these three you're going to need 3 pairs of RCA cables, and these are going to go to your amp. So from your head unit directly to your amp. That's basically taking the signal that your head unit is producing, taking it to the amplifier, which of course amplifies it. And then from the amplifier, you then need to take that signal, run it back through here to the car's wiring so that the car's wiring can take it into the speakers. Otherwise, if you forget about the car's wiring section, you would take the outputs, go to the amp, from the amp, run your own speaker wire to all the different speakers, but that's just a pain in the ass. And unless you're running like major power, not even required. So what you see here, this guy spliced into this wiring. What is actually going to happen, what I'm going to do, is I'm literally just going to cut out that entire section, because since I'm using these RCAs, I don't need to worry about all of these speaker level outputs coming from the head unit. So basically they're going to end here where I've snipped. Nothing is going to happen with the outputs coming out of this wiring section going to the car. I'm going to take that other side of the wire, the side that's actually connected to the car, and I'm going to run an extension into my amplifier. So my amplifier is now going to be outputting the signal and going right into the car's speaker system that's already pre-wired. We're not going to worry about this clipped end here because, as I said before, all of your signal is coming from the RCAs. So hopefully that made sense. If not, just leave a comment and I can explain it a little bit better or something. But for the majority, I think you probably got that. So I'll go ahead and remove all these wires, and then we'll revisit this in a second when I'm wiring the amp. Okay, so I just started snipping here, and then I realized I only talked about what you do if you have a aftermarket head unit. So let's talk about the factory. So factory head unit, that means that you only have this harness here. I actually got rid of the other one just to showcase my point here. So what this is getting is your head unit is sending signals to this, and then they're coming out through these wires. So I've snipped some wires here. And what you see is the green wire and the brown and white wire are paired. That's the left front. The red, yellow, and black, white wire are paired. That's the right front. And then these ones here are the right rear, or right left, I think. And then the other two that are snipped are the other rear ones. So whoever had this amp in here before, I guess they must have had subs because they had it wired to the rears only. That's the wire I removed, by the way. So what's going to happen is these wires are going to give you your signal, and you're going to send that to your amp. So you can do this two ways. You can send this directly to speaker level inputs if your amp accepts speaker level inputs, or you can send it to a line out converter, LOC, and and that's going to convert it into an RCA signal, which then you'll send to your amp that way. And then once your amp amplifies its stuff, does its thing, you're going to do exactly what I'm doing here and run those outputs from your amp back into these wires here. So now that I have that sorted out, I'm going to go ahead and run the power wire. Okay, so about 15 minutes of stuffing and lubing and etc. Widen the gap in the grommet here a little bit. Grommet, that's the word I was looking for before. Soaped it up with some soapy water, which allowed it to slide in there a little bit better. And it came out over here. Just up back there, it popped out, and I was able to pull it through. And of course, I have all the rest of it here now. I popped off this little side panel, which is just this little push pin in there. And then what I'm going to do is send this wire along like that. Send it down through the side here. This just pops up like that. And then the carpet is able to come up. And then the wire can pass through kind of along the side here until it makes its way under the seat. Under the seat. So talking about that, we're obviously going to need to take this out if we're going to get that amp under there. So the way you do that is it has 4 bolts. One is over there, here, and then same at the back. Let's pull that up like that, and you can see the bolts. I've sprayed this down with some PB Blaster. It's a 14 millimeter. I'm going to grab a breaker bar just to make things easier. So here's where I'm at. I went ahead, unbolted the seat, and leaned it backward, undid all these connections here. And honestly, that was probably the most time-consuming part. And now I've got it leaned back in the car, and you can see exactly where the amp's going to sit. So take a look at the ground here. You can see this bracket, this shape, like rectangle right there. And what that corresponds to is this bracket here. Now, looking at this bracket, problem is that goes exactly where I would want to put the amp. And with the seat intact and the bracket intact, I'm not able to put the amp there. We're just going to do away with this. I'm actually just going to remove this entire thing, unbolt it, and put it back down. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me some space under the seat here where I can fit that little guy. And then we have to think about the wiring. And Subaru is nice enough to give me this nice factory cutout there and there for my power wires to come out like that. And then my speaker wires on the other side to go down into the carpet and up through the tunnel here over to my head unit. So we're going to remove the center console when we do the speaker side wire stuff. And we'll get to that and talk about that. Go ahead and run that power wire through the carpet there. And now I need to start working on the speaker wires. So I'm going to go ahead and take the console off. Basically, this little felt flap pops up there, and then there's 2 screws here. You're going to have to pop the parking brake up like that, and then you'll be able to get access to under the console itself. Okay, so this is how you take this apart. You pull up the handbrake covering like this. Be very careful not to break it. It has a habit of breaking right at that spot right there. Then you take out the 2 screws that are in there. Take out this little, pop this little white rivet, and the whole thing will come off just like that. Now that that's off, we've got a nice path here where we can take our speaker wire extensions, run them along like this, and then down through the carpet and out where the amp is going to be there. A bit more progress. I've got the ground wire hooked up and the positive wire. Right now I'm just using the seat bolt here as a temporary ground. I strip back the panes. I may go with that, but the problem is that's going to cause some issues when I put the seat down, because obviously the seat isn't going to sit flush. So there is also another bolt right in here. If you see where that yellow and black wire is going to, there's another bolt right there. I could use as a good ground as well. If you're using the stock head unit, you're going to take the signals off of this wire. They're going to come over here, and they're going to go to the input side here. Now this amp doesn't have speaker level inputs, so you wouldn't be able to use it with those. But if your amp did, you'd see some inputs here where you could run those wires into the amp. And then from the output side here, you'd take these wires and run them back to the part that actually connects to the car's harness. Okay, so for speaker wires, I've run 4 pairs of speaker wires, as you can see, right through this little thing here and up along the center console tunnel there, and then just through this little gap in the bottom, and they come out right here. Now I've also got labels as to which wires speakers they're for, and then corresponding labels on the other side, just because they're all the same wire. Anyway, you need 3 RCA cables, and then I ran everything. I cut a little slit in the transmission tunnel carpet there, ran everything up here like this. RCA's on that side, speaker stuff on that side, and then it all has to go under the bar here and come out the back, and mate to the speaker stuff there. All right, so as you can see, got everything back together. The amp is nice and hidden, and sound system is working nicely. Everything sounds pretty good. Take a look at the engine compartment here. Got my power wire run here. Zip tied it to some various things in the back to make it look nice and clean. Got the fuse right there, and then connects to the positive. Heading over to the seat here. Can't see any wires from the passenger side. Can't really see any wires from the back here. Now you can see just a touch of a wire there, and the reason is because instead of putting the amp this way, I actually ended up turning it that way, so that if you go under here, all you have to do is slide the, you can't see it there, slide the seat forward, and you can get access to the crossover controls and everything there. One thing I didn't show is that I actually took a speaker line and ran it along the back here. I popped the seat up, and then ran the line right there, and it comes out at a subwoofer for the back. That's a Pioneer 10-inch. Not a great subwoofer, but I've actually got a nice Polk Audio monitor series 12-inch that's going to go in this box. I just need to get a spacer because it's too deep for the box. So that one's going to come out, that one's going to go in, but everything is sounding pretty good, and that is it for my amp install. Getting 70 watts RMS to each door speaker with this amp, plus another 200 RMS to the sub. So that's pretty awesome for a single amp. And the sound quality is there too. So if you're interested in seeing the next stage, which is going to be stage 3, my soundproofing and kind of sound enhancement on this car, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe. That's going to be in the next little while once my stuff comes in. And I'm going to be installing some sound deadener and insulation, and then maybe some mass loaded vinyl if I can get my hands on. So go ahead and give me a like and a subscribe if you like, and I'll see you guys next time.